All right, I got a couple minutes after 4:30, so I appreciate everybody taking the time to either be here in person. We've got a few lucky souls to see me in person in the training room in the CCC. We've got 40 or so, maybe more now on online. So welcome to the third session of our leadership training. And just like the last couple, if you have any questions or comments in the virtual world, please send those in through the chat. Miss Stephanie, who is monitoring those. And because I do have a couple of sessions where we're going to have some, hopefully have some give and take and some discussion about a few things. So I will warn you, we had some technical difficulties getting this set up. So we're going to go forward with this. And first thing I want to do, if I can get this to work. I cannot. All right, here we go. So we're going to quick review of the first two sessions. One of the first things we talked about a couple, I guess 4 weeks ago now, was leaders are developed. That great question, are leaders born or are they developed? Leaders are developed over time. They are not born. The 4 skills required for an effective leader to move a group or organization forward toward advantage or toward improvement or toward a vision is first to have vision. You got to know where you're going. Articulation, you got to be able to articulate the vision out to the group. Persuasion, you got to be able to get that group to, you got to persuade them to go with you toward that vision. And then initiative, that was the big one, right? That's one that we really believe is probably the most important one. What we're looking for from leaders here at GSM Services. Then 2 weeks ago, we talked a lot about the Dog Poop Initiative, one of the best short leadership books, maybe of all time, especially talking specifically about initiative. And as we talked about, we are striving here at GSM to be the hero dad in the Dog Poop Initiative, as opposed to the pointers, the avoiders, and the blamers. The pointers, avoiders, and the blamers sure didn't get anything done. So I want to, before we get into maybe a new subject, I'm going to talk about that. There's an old parable. A lot of you may have heard this parable, but it's about initiative as well, called Working Upstream. I'm going to read this real quick. You and a friend are having a picnic by the side of a river. Suddenly you hear a shout from the direction of the water. A child is drowning. Without thinking, you both dive in, grab the child, and swim to shore. Before you can recover, you hear another child cry for help. You and your friend jump back in the river to rescue her as well. Then another struggling child drifts into sight, and another and another. The two of you can barely keep up. Suddenly, you see your friend wading out of the water, seeming to leave you alone. Where are you going? You demand. Your friend answers, I'm going upstream to tackle the guy who's throwing all these kids in the water. So similar to the Dog Poop Initiative, this is a good example of somebody taking initiative and solving problems, what we would call upstream, right? That's a good part of a leadership, and I think a good definition of taking initiative, maybe trying to solve problems before they get too big, or maybe even if you're really good, you can solve those problems before they even occur. That's a great story. If you just Google that, you'll find the parable of the two guys by the river, and it's a good one to keep in mind. All right, this is one, when I started sharing a little quote or thought on Mondays earlier this year, or maybe back toward the end of last year, this was probably my favorite quote on leadership. And before I get into a little further, I want to read this as well. Average leaders raise the bar on themselves. Good leaders raise the bar for others. Great leaders inspire others to raise their own bar. Average leaders raise the bar on themselves. Good leaders raise the bar for others. And great leaders inspire others to raise their own bar. So great leaders are inspiring others to take initiative. All right, we can get this to work. I'm going to hopefully play a video. This is a video, if you've been at the company long enough, you probably saw this at one of our safety meetings or company meetings. This is a good little 2-minute video or so about some other aspects, some other ways to look at leadership. So out there in virtual world, we're going to do our best for you guys to hear this. This is where we had some audio problems earlier, so.
Analysis. It looks like a small incandescent bulb designed to indicate something on the orbit. I find it pretty and somewhat hypnotic. That too, sir. Right. Rico. Manual. Problemo solved. Sir, we may be out of fuel. What makes you think that? We've lost engine 1. And engine 2 is no longer on fire. Buckle up, boys. Don't look down. This might get hairy. Attention, this is Jim Jackson speaking. I've got good news and bad news. The good news is we'll be landing immediately. Bad news is we're crash landing. Wake up, stay out, John. We know you have to do today's bus up there. Thanks again for choosing Airtech.
CBS Health.
I don't have to pour oil in my car.
What is it, Weston? Cooking oil?
I don't need a name. I don't have to pour oil in my car.
I don't know what you putting in there.
Cooking oil.
Cooking oil.
Technical right there. I don't have to put oil on me.
Only 2 passengers on Casco. Skipper. That's a number I can live with. Good landing, boys. Who says a penguin can't fly?
You're trying to watch Ava.
All right, what are some leadership traits or lessons or anything from that video? Obviously, there were some that were on the screen that they showed, but what about anything else that we've talked about? Yeah, he had a vision of what to do, right? Maintaining composure. He initially took some initiative when he decided to smash the warning light, so problem solved, right? Maybe not exactly problem solved. Do you have to persuade them to take the action needed to have a safe landing? Well, the quick decision making under dire conditions. Did they panic? The people in charge didn't panic. The passengers panicked, understandably. I like the backup to the backup to the backup. Any chat there at all, Miss Stephanie? Okay, that's good. All right, so
Yeah, David Case said,
related to that,
David Case said the leader had to plan the entire
Michael's trying
town.
to say something, or is he talking to somebody? I can see him. He's probably working. So roads of GSM leadership. So we talked about those 4 skills to be an effective leader. But it's not enough to be an effective leader. You also have to be virtuous. Okay? There are plenty of historical examples of effective leaders who were not virtuous. This led to some of the greatest disasters in world history. Anybody think of some examples of leaders who were very effective, but they weren't necessarily virtuous or weren't necessarily doing the right thing, and that led to some historical issues in the world? Obviously, Hitler is the first one that comes to mind, because if you really study history, it would be hard to argue that he wasn't effective. But do people consider him when people think of good leaders, do people think of Hitler? Who else? Any other examples? Genghis Khan, he was pretty effective. Okay, yeah, that's a good one.
Really?
Anybody else? The point there is leadership requires more than just persuading people to come along with you. Okay? Part of that vision probably should be there's some underlying core values and morality, or however you want to describe it, that goes along with that. Okay? A great leader must have the leadership virtues that comprise the 5 habits and ethics of moral excellence that enable an individual to be who a true leader is. So again, just because I'm effective and somebody decides to follow doesn't mean I'm going to take them down a good path. And there's 5 very specific virtues, habits and ethics, I should say, that a good leader exhibits. The first is candor. Candor's a tough one. At least I find it to be a tough one. I'm just going to read this one. First, he or she must have candor, which is the habit of graciously, let me repeat, graciously telling the hard truth and demanding to hear it from others. For a group's movement to be voluntary, its members must know the truth. So a good leader, first of all, has to be candid with the group, the team, the organization, and maybe more importantly, that leader has to be open to receiving the truth as well. Good organizations, good teams, good leaders have people around them that are willing to tell the truth. Then you have to be humble enough as a leader to take that information and use it. How many people like to be told or given, how can I phrase this graciously? How many people like to be told or given information that might be constructive criticism or might be something that you don't really want to hear? I don't like to hear that. Most of the time I don't like it because oftentimes when I hear it, I know it's the truth. I don't want to accept that I might be doing something that's not as effective or virtuous from a leadership standpoint as it should be. That's an extremely important one and a very difficult one for teams because most people don't want to hear the truth. They want to accept the truth that they've already convinced themselves that this is the way it is. And by goodness, this is the way it's going to be, and nobody tell me otherwise. Ooh. Did y'all hear that? Embrace constructive criticism because it leads to growth. Good leaders and people who are open to feedback know that's the truth. And most of the time, there was a word in that paragraph that was gracious. All right. If somebody's doing it to you or with you or for you graciously, they're doing it because out of frankly, in most cases, out of love, because they want to help you to get better. Doesn't mean you have to like it at first, but we're still human, and that can be hard to see. Second is commitment. He or she must have commitment, which is unwavering loyalty to the group and unflinching determination to accomplish its mission. Effective leadership alone may achieve short-term results, but it takes a committed leader to obtain long-term advantage or progress for the group or team. If you remember, our theme here last year was hold the line. Okay, hold the line on the things that we're trying to accomplish. Hold the line on our mission that we're trying to accomplish every day. Hold the line on our core values. Without commitment, without the group knowing that that leader is truly committed to the mission and to the vision, it's not going to work. Absolutely not going to work. It's unbelievably critical that leader in the group is committed, because if they see that they're not going to follow, you're not going to be able to persuade them if they don't believe that you're committed to both the mission and frankly to their personal well-being. Here's another tough one: consistency. Leaders have to be consistent. He or she must be consistent in that he is unchanging in nature, standard, or effect over time. Inconsistent leaders cannot be fully relied upon and ultimately produce inconsistent results. There's my first, looks like I've got 2 grammar mistakes in that one paragraph. So consistency. In other words, a group can't show up every day not knowing how their leader is going to act. Can't walk in every single day, whether it's a company, whether it's the military, whether it's my F3 group that I'm involved with, whether it's your family, whatever, your church. If the people that you are leading every single day, they walk in the door and are like, okay, I wonder how, Stephen's going to be acting today. Or you have to ask around, is it okay to go talk to Stephen in his office, or is this the day I need to stay away? It's kind of like when you have teenagers. I text my wife before I leave work. Can I go talk to my daughter when I get home today, or I need to stay away? Got to test it before I get home to know what to expect. A team that's following a leader needs to know what to expect every single day. That behavior and what they're doing every single day needs to be consistent. Next is contentment. This is a tough one, because most of the time you might not associate contentment with leadership. He or she must possess contentment, which is the stability of emotion engendered by the consistent pursuit of joy rather than happiness. Only a contented person can abandon the pursuit of his or her own personal comfort. Translated, if you're the leader, it's not about you. Another way to maybe describe this would be unselfish. If you're in a position of leadership, it's not about you. Leaders eat last. Yep. Leaders eat last. And then the pursuit, the way this is worded, the pursuit of joy versus happiness, to me is more of it's a long-term state of mind compared to the short-term happiness. So to me, sometimes happiness is what? A hot chocolate and a Krispy Kreme donut. All right, that's happiness. That is short-lived. Chick-fil-A, yes. Yeah, just for the record, Naomi gets Chick-fil-A all the time and she never brings me any. That is now on the record for the entire company. I am not contented about the Chick-fil-A around here. But contentment, that's a big concept that I think is difficult. For me personally, that's a difficult one. But it's about the people you are leading. It's not about you. That's a tough one for leaders sometimes. Last one, and some people would say this might be the most important one, is courage. He or she must be a person with courage, which is a habit of setting aside fear to turn hardship into grace. While a leader may be effective by pretending fear does not exist, the virtuous leader accepts fear as the natural and necessary human emotion that it is and overcomes it through self-control and being prepared. Does this look familiar, Purple Haze? Yeah, these five come straight out of a leadership study that several of us have done through my F3 group. Listen, fear, if you're not doing something worthwhile, you're going to be afraid of results unless you're 100% sure of yourself all the time. I got news for you. Most leaders are never 100% sure of themselves all the time. If you're not doing something that's taking a risk every now and then you probably are not leading the group in the manner that you should be leading. There should be always some type of risk being taken in order to move a group or a team forward in a good direction. So again, go through these again real quick. It was candor, commitment, consistency, contentment, and courage. So I've got another video. Let's see if we can get it to play. And speaking of leaders eat last, this is a video from Simon Sinek. He's written a couple good, really, really terrific books. One of them is called Leaders Eat Last. All right.
The problem with leadership, like parenting, is it cannot be measured on a daily basis. It is like exercise. I can give you all the science and numbers of people, that prove that exercise is good for your health and helps you live longer. And you might be compelled by my science, and you'll go to the gym, and you'll come home from the gym, and you look in the mirror, and you'll see nothing. And then go to the gym the next day, and you'll come back and look in the mirror, and you'll see nothing. Worse, you're in pain. And the problem is because you can measure the pain easily, and you can measure the time you're spending, but you don't see benefit, you might quit. But if you look at a picture of yourself 3 months from before, you're like, I can't believe I look like that. There's not a single person here that knows on a daily basis if you're a good parent. You have no clue. You get glimmers of hope when you see your child accomplish something, like I'm doing something like, you catch your kid reading under the blankets late at night, like makes you feel good, You really will not know if you've actually done a good job for like 30 years, right? But you have a sense of what a good parent should do, and it's done whatever you do is done with love. And it's done with the absolute obsession with the care of this human being. The one characteristic, I've only been able to find one, that I'm absolutely comfortable saying that all great leaders have, only one, is courage. Because sometimes being a leader means you have to go first. In fact, that's why we call them leaders, right? In other words, everyone in the organization knows what has to be done. But who's going to volunteer to do it? Most people go, oh, I can see what happens. It's management. It's their problem. I don't have control of it as CEO. I'm not the CEO. You are not a leader. Leaders are the ones who say, I could get my head cut off here. I'll give it a try. And what ends up happening is others follow. But if you get your head cut off, then you have to go plan another job. That's the risk you run. Leadership comes at tremendous risk. It's all about what you see the objective. And a good parent doesn't see the objective as get a bigger house. A good parent sees the objective as look after my children. A good CEO, a good leader sees their objective not as accomplish the mission or grow the bottom line. Those are all good things as a result of, but a good leader sees themselves as how do I get the best out of my people?
What about that video? Any comments? If you want to not waste some time, but you want to get trapped into something, go YouTube Simon Sinek, and you can find quite a lot of videos. He's got I've seen 8 or 10 of his that I would recommend on a lot of different subjects, but leadership is one of his specialty subjects that I would recommend strongly. What do you think his description of courage? Parenting. You gotta have some courage to be a parent. Well, that question went over like a load of bricks. To hear it, yeah, I'm afraid. Yeah, I apologize for that. Thank you, Stephanie. All right, this is a little concept that I've come across in the last 5 or 6 months. Effective and virtuous leaders show courage by doing the hard and important things. As a leader, how do you know something is important to do? That's a question that I probably didn't really think about. I sure didn't think about it years ago, but recently, it's an interesting question. How do you know as a leader if something is important to do? Okay. It might take you toward your objective. Okay. Might not see the problem, and you see the ripple effects of the action. Ooh. Okay. Important to the team on the goals. Ron said somebody doesn't want to, you see people don't want to do something because they're lazy. Could be, okay.
Is it in line with our core values?
That's a good question to ask. Is it in line with our core values? Yeah, will it help develop others? That's good. How about this question or answer maybe? By the level of how badly you want to avoid it. I don't remember where I saw this first. It was probably something I read, but when I read that, I said, oh my Lord, that is exactly right. When I look down at the things I need to be doing or the things I want to accomplish, I know I have learned in the last 5 or 6 months, if it's something important, lots of times I don't want to do it because it's hard. I got to have a tough conversation. It's something I've never done before. There's all kinds of reasons why, as leaders, there's things that we want to avoid, but that's where the courage comes in. Is a good, effective, and virtuous leader will overcome the fear of doing these hard things to accomplish the mission, to get us closer to getting better, whatever we're trying to accomplish. But if you have some anxiety about it, or you really don't want to do it, or there's a little fear there, that's probably telling you that it's something important and you should do it. Ooh. Those are all terrific, yes. This is actually a thing. Homer Simpson. Isn't that how you feel sometimes? Or maybe you hope, can't somebody else just do it? I was looking for some slide to go with that, and I Googled that. Oh, my Lord. It's literally some anti-Nike thing, I think. But so how do we do that? So how do we overcome these things? And typically, we're going to end on, got two more little things, but it's simple, but not necessarily easy. You do it one conversation or interaction at a time. One conversation, one interaction at a time. That's how, ultimately, that's how things are accomplished. Occasionally, there might be some grand, gigantic thing that we accomplish, or something happens, you know, but most of the time, it's these little 1% things that make the difference. It's the one conversation, it's the one interaction, whether it's with each other, whether it's somebody you work with, whether it's your family, whether it's a customer, somebody in the community. And we need to remember, especially if we're in a position of leadership, and ultimately, you know what, we're all on some level in a position of leadership. But we have to remember the impact that we have in those interactions. You never know what that little interaction might do for somebody, and how, I think we talked about it last time about the effect we have on people. We have an effect. We always have an effect, some kind of impact. We have to be intentional to make sure that it's a positive impact, and you have to have the courage to understand those interactions, make those intentional. So that's how we're going to end today, is just trying to remember that, again, it's not the gigantic things that typically occur. It's all the small interactions that we have. Any other comments, Miss Stephanie, coming in that we need to share real quick? Believing in something is a verb in action. So I'm going to leave it with this. This is, again, I think I'm going to share some type of resource every session. There's a book called Upstream by Dan Heath. This guy's actually, I think he lives in Durham. The subtitle of the book is The Quest to Solve Problems Before They Happen. It's a good book if you're a reader. In fact, the book starts with that parable that I shared at the very beginning about initiative. Two guys by the river. But that Dan Heath and his brother Chip, I think is his name. They've written several books that are worthwhile on personal development, leadership, decision making. Anybody got any other comments or anything they want to share before we close it out this week? Oh, that's good. All right, if you heard that, Leonidas is one of the examples I used 4 weeks ago. He was a good example of overcoming, using courage to overcome some significant fear. And what was the second one? Second comment, Stephanie, I'm sorry. All right, yeah. Yeah, leading by example. If you can't do the small things, how do you expect your crew or the people you work with to do the small things, and then into the bigger things as well? All right, anything else for the good of the group, the team? Good leaders might pray as well. That's okay. Sometimes it's required. All right, everybody out there in the Zoom world, thank you for your time. Everybody here in the room, appreciate your time. And we will do this again in a couple weeks. Don't hesitate. Anybody has any questions or anything from me or Joel or anybody else in the leadership team along the way, between now and then, don't hesitate to find us. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Steve.
everybody.
Thank you.